Hi, everyone, and welcome to PRO Talks. I'm Gabriel Hedingren, and today we will be talking about the most trendy and potentially to some tiresome topic of 2023, which is artificial intelligence. What we want to do today is be as positive as possible about this topic. Many of the benefits of AI we feel are currently being clouded out a bit in the mainstream discussion as people, rightfully focus on the dangers of it, how to regulate it, given the sort of rapid developments in how algorithms are being developed and deployed that we're all seeing and being very excited about. But we really do think that as we handle those issues, we cannot lose focus on the positives that it brings across various industries. And to discuss this with me, I have three lovely guests. So that is Monica Crespo, Head of Product at Justmundi, Angel Albrecht Bayari, Founder and CEO of Kibim, and then my colleague Mark Cohen, Managing Director at the PR Office. So how I thought we would start this is just hearing from the three of you about the industry you're in and the role that AI is playing within that in the year of 2023. Monica?
Thank you, Gabriel. And yes, my name is Monica Crespo. I am the head of product at Justmundi. Justmundi is a legal intelligence platform, and we bring efficiency to legal research. AI has been playing a key role into this work, both in the data processing of legal documents. For us, that means making more legal documents available, so opening data on law, which means better access to legal documents, to understanding what is the law, and better access to rule of law. And on the other side, on the product side, is bringing efficiency into lawyers. So bringing efficiency into the day-to-day of key workers in democracy, in international law, and we mainly focus on international arbitration. We have seen incredible innovations, and the key development is the use of generative AI for these two specific use cases. So data processing and generating new products. Just to give you a small snippet, imagine a task that would take you days to do, which is browsing the whole internet to understand one legal concept to represent a client, can now be done in a few minutes. And yes, the data is not perfect. And yes, we need to review the data and have standards of quality to review that legal information. But that increases so much the efficiency, not only for lawyers, corporate lawyers, but also for those public international law lawyers that are doing key tasks for the rule of law globally. So it's huge and it's super exciting and it's very positive what is happening.
Thank you, Monica. That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more about that. So, from professional services, then to you, Angel, and the healthcare sector and how AI is being used there.
Yeah, thank you, Gabriel, for the invitation here. Basically, we at Kibim are transforming the imaging data from MRI, CT, and PET modalities into actionable predictions using AI. So AI can mine all those images and streamline radiology interpretation time. We know today that we are in a kind of epidemic of burnout. Having like skilled professionals being able to see and to interpret all the imaging data that's being generated at hospitals is very challenging. And AI can definitely improve those workflows. That is just to start, right? It's a workflow improvement solution where you can identify organs, identify potential malignant lesions. But not only that, and the biggest ambition of Kibim is, okay, once I have these lesions, I also want to know what's going to happen in these patients in the future. What will be the estimated survival? Is this patient at risk? Yes, no. So being able to answer these kind of questions for the benefit of clinicians and the benefit of patients.
Yeah, it's really, really fascinating and such a clear positive impact of it as well. And then, Mark, do you want to talk about PRO and your experience and how we work with AI?
Sure, Gabriel, and yeah, thanks also for having me on. I guess I come at this two hats. Number one, I'm speaking as somebody who works in the marketing, kind of communications, public relations industry. Our industry, like many others, in some ways not too dissimilar from the legal industry, also is very open to both disruption and also augmentation to improve quality. You know, for example, research is a huge part of the work that's done, whether it's market research or whether it's understanding what's been written about companies across databases, or in the political sphere, what different politicians and regulators are saying. All of these things, and now we're seeing a generative sort of LLM tools coming up to really help to improve the quality of information that goes in, to therefore increase the quality of the outputs. We're also seeing the same in terms of drafting and some of the more some manual work that's done, whether it's writing press releases or marketing brochures or pitch documents and things like that. So there's a huge amount of disruption coming in. On I guess the positive side is that takes away a lot of the more basic tools, and it enables the human side to focus more on providing advice and strategic advice, consultancy, that type of thing, which augments some of the more basic tasks. So the industry is likely to change quite significantly in terms of how we operate. What's also interesting as well is that from a PR perspective, particularly, and also a regulatory public affairs perspective, there's a huge debate going on. We're having this conversation now. We're seeing it all over the media around the pros and cons of AI, the benefits, how do you regulate it, should it be regulated, and things like that. So it's sort of fascinating both to work in that industry, advising and forming the debate, but also to see how it impacts our industry as well.
Thank you, Mark. So on that point about sort of media and the public conversation about AI, it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective, Monica, someone working with this at Justmundi, like, in your view, what do you think of the current conversations? What do you think are the big misconceptions around AI and how it's being used? And just your overall experience of sort of the last year, when all of a sudden everyone wants to talk about this, rather than just sort of the nerdy techie people that would discuss this a few years ago.
Sure. Actually, for law, it's quite different than other technology innovations, because usually lawyers tend to be the last adopters of new innovations in technology. With AI, and specifically with generative AI, the game is changing a little bit, which means that there's a lot of hype around it. There's a lot of interest on generative AI. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, that interest becomes more of a fear. And that leads me to attack your question, which is, so what are the biggest misconceptions? And for me, the big misconception, at least in the legal sector, is that we package all AI into the same box and we should fear all AI. And all AI requires us to be worried about it. And I think we need to unpackage this more. And for law specifically, I think it's legitimate to have that concern, but we need to unpackage it on what is the data that is being used, what is the training data that we're using for the AI, what is the model that we're using, what are the use cases for this specific model, for this specific AI. I think when lawyers talk about AI, they're talking about specifically generative AI, but they don't realize that they're also referring to tools that they have been using for decades. So tools for e-discovery task. E-discovery is what lawyers use during the exhibit processing part. So that part when they're evaluating evidence. And I think we need to unpackage that. And the big misconception is just putting AI into one big box. For law, it's not the same to use, for example, natural language processing to extract data from a document than using natural language models to calculate the risk, for example, of a convicted criminal on the risk of recidivism. It's not the same thing. We're not using the same data. We're not using the same models, and it doesn't have the same consequence for the people affected by the use of the model. So for me, one big misconception is to be afraid to define what AI we're talking about. And if we're looking to apply it in a way that contributes to society, we need to stop being afraid of this, defining this tool and unpackage it. What are we talking about? And let's talk about the details if we want to really reap the benefits, which there are for law, for medicine, for many different industries.
And on that note, Angel, moving into the healthcare sector where you're from and where Kibim is working, does what Monica is saying resonate with you? And are there any sort of particular concerns and misconceptions you're seeing specifically tied to health data and how AI is used to improve the management of that?
Yeah, actually, I think that AI has suffered from a kind of chronic misconception in the area of healthcare, and that's thinking that AI is going to replace doctors instead of thinking of it as a co-pilot, right? And actually, what we see today is that unlike in general life scenarios where you have AI able to like generate any kind of image nowadays, or autocomplete, or be able to generate also any piece of text. Still in medicine, we are not that advanced. In medicine, we've suffered also from another, I would say, issue, that's the lack of access to data. I think we are quite good at organ donation, but we are not that good at data donation, right? And data donorship. And that has made that also linked to the incident, right? You can take cancer, for example, and well, thanks God that we don't have millions and millions and millions of patients of a specific cancer indication. But that makes AI deployment very challenging. I mean, we need to be very accurate in the way we curate the data and we select the data for training the AI models, right? And that's what basically I think is the paradox, no? That the advances in consumer applications of AI are way faster than the advances in medical applications of AI, no? And that's basically due to the lack of data access.
It'd be interesting to hear just going back to Monica, because one of my questions, Akko, was about specific roadblocks to this technology, bringing the benefit of AI, I guess, to people using the products and to us all. Monica, other than sort of the misconceptions and sort of cultural misunderstandings and blockages, are there any similar things like Angel mentions data sharing? Are there any similar roadblocks that you're seeing in the legal sector that you think will need to be ironed out?
Yes, for the legal sector, we have different layers of regulation that may affect the evolution of AI. I'm talking about specifically arbitration data. We have first the country regulations that define how we use data. And then you have for arbitration institutions that might impose additional layers of regulation. And in general, one of the roadblocks is that we have many good examples of good regulations that integrate both industry knowledge and academics that have spent years on defining how to best tackle the risks of AI in the specific use case of law. We have many academics, many people that have been working on this for years. And not all the regulations that are implemented involve both industry knowledge, academic knowledge, and also practical knowledge on how to define the best route to provide guidelines for the use of AI. So I think that is one roadblock. And in addition, also sometimes because of lack of knowledge, mostly from the users, there are unrealized expectations from AI. And because you have this either high or very low expectations, very high saying like you're going to get the truth from AI, let's say, when truth is not really a concrete concept in fields like law, then you have the high expectation that you're going to get quote unquote truth. And obviously you're not, specifically in fields where you don't have black or white answers. In the US, that led to the famous cases of two lawyers using the results of their prompting with ChatGPT, and they drafted a submission to the court with ChatGPT, and the information was false. So what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes there are unrealistic expectations due to lack of knowledge and how the tools work, either too positive or too negative, which is it's always going to give me a wrong answer. So why am I going to even try to work on it? So I think lack of knowledge or lack of fear sometimes can be a roadblock to better develop things and consider those risks that are legitimate to provide a better evolution of the product.
Thank you, Monica. That's really interesting. And then, Mark, I guess it'd be interesting to hear from you on this. I guess more from sort of a media and public conversation perspective. So obviously, someone like Monica, someone like Angel will be advocating for this technology inside their sectors, inside their companies, but when they do that, the people on the other end, the people using it, the people having their data used, will be seeing all these conversations in the media, on social media, with their friends, sort of in the public space. So what's your thought on how the conversation is going there and the big misconceptions? And then following on from that, would be interesting to hear your thoughts on how companies developing AI are managing being part of that conversation at the moment, given the sort of overall very much risk and fear focused conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Gabe, and it's been a super interesting hearing Angel and Monica's perspectives. I think coming at this from a slightly more macro perspective, because obviously in the industry we're in, we work with companies across different types of AI in different sectors as well, and obviously follow the media agenda very closely. I think there's probably a fundamental misconception that we see around AI, and it sort of comes from this sort of Prometheus myth, that the robots can take over and control the world and take over humanity. Ultimately, AI is just math code. It's numbers on a digital numbers, and it doesn't have its own thoughts and feelings and brains and motivations and desires and objectives and wants. It has whatever has been programmed into it. So I think that a lot of the public discourse needs to take away some of the myth around AI, maybe some of its power. I think some people are maybe intentionally wanting people to think that AI can do all these wonderful things, but at the same time, it creates therefore the fear that if AI is going to solve all our problems, it can also create all our problems as well. But I think there needs to be a sort of dialing down of rhetoric across the board and a bit of an understanding of what AI is. I think that comes to points around roadblocks as well, where, like Angel said, if you see AI as almost omnipotent, godlike, then there's no role for humans, because what possibly can humans do to compete with God? If you see AI as a tool which can augment and support humans, as only as good as the coding, then suddenly it becomes a partner for humanity to improve and develop as well. So this is getting quite philosophical, and this is maybe getting a bit sort of outside of some of the more technical areas, but I do think that it is almost a philosophical discussion. It's something that kind of needs to happen at that level, and then from that we can perhaps build the tools and win the hearts and minds and take people, whether it's radiographers or lawyers or marketing consultants or anyone else whose jobs might potentially be at risk from AI as well. And I think that could also help to feed into the regulation of it, because if the fear is compounded at the same time as the promise is overhyped, and those two things I think go hand in hand.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark, and I think it inevitably becomes philosophical when you talk about this more broadly. Angel, it would be interesting to hear from you as the CEO of an AI startup in essence. What's the experience like for you at the moment in terms of speaking publicly, advocating for AI, sort of this general public conversation, and being sort of a face of this tech? It'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on that.
No, yeah, that's a interesting question, and at least my answer from my own experience. I started in this field working with the specialists that I am impacting the most right now. Let me put it that way. So I started to work with radiologists in the very early days, right, and with radiographers. I would spend my early days side by side with radiographers, learning how MRI exams are acquired and how the parameters from the MRI or the CT scanner influence the image quality. So I learned a lot on the whole process, and they saw me as one additional expert in the field, right? So I started to publish a lot with radiologists. And when I started to lead this AI initiative, of course, we had a wave of opposition to AI, right? Or at least to concern on what's going on. But then around 4 years in, after all the radiologists started to embrace more and more this kind of technologies, they clearly identify which are the companies that have medical knowledge in the DNA, right? And that's something I've always taken care of, making sure that we are not just trying to solve needs that do not exist in medicine. So we hear a lot, the doctors, we work with doctors in the company all the time. And that has made us also being appointed as a, there is also even an award about this. It's called the Friends of Radiology, right? So we received that award in the past, because in the end, it's clear that if you apply AI for good, you are trying to not create, a strange robot-based doctor, but you are just trying to create tools that can streamline current workflows. And that's very well received by the community, because in the end, as I was saying before, there's a huge epidemic right now of burnout in radiologists.
Thank you. And Monica, going back to you then, being more in the professional services space, does what Ankel says resonate with you? Do you think that companies like Gismundi, that law firms themselves, are doing a good job in terms of being part of this discussion in a constructive way? And how's that for you as someone working as a senior leader with the technology in this area?
That's a good question. Actually, we tend to be very active in the international arbitration field, and it's very interesting to see how, unlike, again, other technology innovations, lawyers are very interested in now understanding better and seeing how AI, specifically how generative AI now, can be used in their workflows to bring efficiency, because the benefits are quite evident for lawyers. So they want to understand better how are companies mitigating the risks, and how can they leverage these new technologies to improve their provision of services. So how can they innovate in their own services through technology? And on the side of Gismundi, we have been working closely with not only our users, but also institutions that have questions or that are drafting guidelines to foresee how we can build, let's say, a better future where generative AI can be used for the better in this specific sector. And I think that's something that, as companies that are building AI products for such high risk areas, which are law and medicine, we have that obligation as well of not only developing the products, but being conscious of what are the needs, what are the risks, what are they afraid of, and how can we work together to build that better future where we want to be working at. So yeah, I think it's very similar to what you're saying, Angel.
I thought, as we sort of start wrapping this up, you mentioned looking to the future. So I thought it would be interesting to hear from you, Monica, as well. If you look at sort of 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, what specific application of AI in professional services, and I guess the law sector in particular, are you most excited about? What do you think will bring the most good in the end to the sector in terms of a specific use case of these algorithms?
Something that I'm super excited about is just improving legal research and how it's going to transform legal research. For me, that's going to evolve into quantitative analysis for strategic legal decision making. What does that mean? So applying more quantitative methods to analyze previous data to make better decisions for a specific case in the future. That doesn't mean replacing lawyers. That means having all the information as insights for lawyers to make decisions to better advise their clients. That's something that I'm super excited about. And another key use case is legal drafting. Drafting takes so much time, and just having templates that can be later customized, it's a game changer for lawyers.
I can't even relate probably to the amount of paperwork and analysis lawyers have to live with. So I can imagine the impact that will have. Mark, what about you? What are you most excited about 10 years down the line, both for us as PR professionals, but then more broadly as well in terms of what can capture the imagination of the media and people more broadly?
Yeah, I think for the kind of wider communications marketing industry, it's probably quite similar to the law to an extent. The volume of paperwork is not necessarily as high, but then again, if you look at the fact we have to analyze media articles across the internet with the proliferation of social media and things like that, there's a huge amount of data. And a lot of, and there's a famous saying in marketing, 50% of my marketing budget is a waste of money. I just don't know which 50%. But that is true. Even with sophisticated tools at the minute, a lot of it is still based on a certain amount of guesswork and experience, of course. But if you can bring in a balance of quantitative as well as qualitative analysis, you could be much, much more targeted over who you speak to, when, what specific message is tailored. So there's quite exciting opportunities. That doesn't frighten me as someone who works in communications. That excites me, because what it does is it means that you can then make better decisions. You can create more output as well, and at higher quality. So the quality of everything and the training improves. So I think that is similar probably across professional services. Law is one example, but you will see it across the board. Beyond that, I think has to be probably in the two areas of medical and sort of climate tech. I think that the world has got many, many problems at the minute. And I think with great application, not just of AI, but of technologies generally, but a lot of it will be AI-led technology. If we can really improve healthcare outcomes, particularly across emerging worlds, and also bring in technologies that can tackle climate change. That's the only way I think that there'll be some resolution to that, because current human applications are not going to significantly stop the growth of whether it's pandemics or growth of cancer or other types of health illnesses, and it's certainly, unfortunately, not going to probably lead to those environmental targets that we all need. So I think technology will have to step in, and I think AI will be a critical part of that. At least I certainly hope so.
Then Ankrel, then in your sector or more broadly as well, what are you most excited about, both at Kibim, but more broadly, I guess, in terms of what AI will be able to do for radiologists and then obviously patients as well?
Yeah, I'm gonna be super futuristic here. So I'm really thinking right now that in 10 years' time, we will be capable of almost making the human body transparent, right? Understanding what's happening at every single tissue point and converting all the organs into data that we can mine. This will help us to build digital twins of ourselves. This is something we're already working on. And ultimately, the application of these digital twins will allow to bring imaging to prevention. Today, imaging is post-symptomatic. So once you are sick, you take care. We want to go from a sick care model to a health assurance. So basically being able to do periodic checkups using imaging, screening all the human body, converting all the organs into data, and basically being able to apply that for preventive healthcare.
That does sound futuristic and really fascinating. Like, let's cross our fingers that we'll get there. Thank you so much, Monica, Ankrel, and Mark, for coming on PRO Talks to talk about AI with us. It's been really fascinating. I think we've had an amazing spread of professional services, health, communications, and the philosophical discussion as well. So thank you so much, and I hope to have you back sometime in the future.